I was brushing my teeth when the doorbell rang. It was almost midnight, and I figured it had to be a delivery guy at the wrong address, or maybe one of my neighbors locked out. I wasn't expecting anyone. My nights were usually boring: TV reruns, half-eaten leftovers, and falling asleep with my phone still in my hand. But when I opened the door, there he was, Mason, and he looked wrecked. His eyes were red, cheeks streaked with tears, and he was standing there in joggers and a hoodie like he'd just run through a breakup playlist on a loop. His voice cracked when he spoke. "Can I crash here tonight?" I didn't even hesitate. "Yeah, of course." He stepped in, shoulders slumped, and I shut the door behind him. The air felt different immediately, heavy, charged. Mason and I had been friends since college. We met freshman year in an economics class we both dropped after 3 weeks. Bonded over how much we hated it, and somehow just stuck. We weren't best friends in the clingy, always together sense, but when shit hit the fan, we showed up for each other. And judging by the look on his face, this was definitely a fan-hitting moment. "What happened?" I asked, leading him to the couch. He sat down slowly, like his whole body ached. "Julian broke up with me," he muttered, rubbing his face with both hands. "Over text." I felt a flare of anger on his behalf. Julian was older, supposedly mature, and had been Mason's boyfriend for almost a year. "You're kidding," he shook his head. "Nope, I don't think we're aligned anymore. I need space, I hope you understand." That's what he said. I mean, who the hell does that after a year? I didn't know what to say, so I sat next to him and handed him a bottle of water. He took it with a small "thanks," and then we just sat there in silence for a bit. "I didn't know where else to go," he said eventually. "I'm glad you came here." He gave me a weak smile. "You're the only person I can be around right now without wanting to throw something." That hit harder than it should have. I nodded toward the hallway. "You want the bed or the couch?" He hesitated. "I don't want to kick you out of your bed, man. The couch is fine." "You're not kicking me out. I've slept on that couch after way too many beers. It's basically broken in." He gave a soft laugh, the first one I had heard from him since he showed up. "All right, thanks." I went to grab him some blankets while he changed in the bathroom. When I came back, he was already curled up on the couch, hoodie pulled over his head, looking smaller than usual. "You good?" I asked. He pulled the hoodie back a bit and gave me a look. "No, but this helps." "All right, wake me up if you need anything." I turned to go, but he called out, "Wait." I paused. He sat up slowly, looking at me with this expression I couldn't read. Vulnerable, maybe. A little lost. "Can you just sit with me for a second?" I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to, but because something in his voice made my chest tighten. I nodded and sat down on the edge of the couch. He didn't say anything else, just leaned into my side, his head against my shoulder like it was the most natural thing in the world. We stayed like that for a while, and just when I thought he'd fallen asleep, I felt his hand brush against mine. Slow, hesitant. He didn't say anything. Neither did I, but I didn't pull away. Something shifted in that moment. Subtle, but definite. A line had moved, and I couldn't tell if we were crossing it or just standing at the edge, waiting to see what would happen next. We didn't move. Not for a long time. Mason leaned against me like it was something he'd done 100 times before. And maybe he had, in smaller ways, leaning on me when he was drunk, when we were watching a game, when we stayed up talking on long road trips. But this was different. There was nothing casual about this. Nothing in between us but a layer of cotton and a few inches of shared air. Eventually I shifted a little, trying to find a more comfortable angle. That's when he spoke. "You're warm." It was quiet, barely audible, but it hit something in me like a slow ripple. "You're not asleep?" He gave a soft, tired sound. "Not really. Thought I'd be, but my head won't shut up." I could feel the weight of his words, even more than his body next to mine. That slow sadness that lingers after a breakup. But there was something else too. Something he wasn't saying out loud. You want to talk? He shook his head against my shoulder. Not about him. I don't want to give him more time than he already took. Fair. So I said nothing. Just sat with him. Let him have silence that didn't feel empty. Then, out of nowhere, he whispered, "You were always the one who saw me. Like, really saw me." My throat tightened. What do you mean? I mean... He pulled back slightly so he could look at me. His eyes were glassy but steady. With Julian, I always felt like I had to perform, like I had to be this version of me that he'd want to show off. You never made me feel like that. I didn't know what to say. That kind of thing. He'd never said anything like that to me before. I managed a quiet, "Thanks." He smiled, but it faded just as quickly. I keep thinking about what I did wrong, what I missed, what I should have seen coming. You didn't do anything wrong, I said, maybe a little too quickly. You loved someone, that's not a crime. Still hurts like hell. I know. There was a long pause. Then Mason shifted closer again, his hand finding mine under the blanket this time. Intentionally. He didn't grip it, just laid his fingers over mine, slow and soft, the kind of touch you don't give to just anyone. I looked down at our hands, surprised by how natural it felt, how easy it was to let him touch me like that. You ever think about it? He asked. My heart skipped. Think about what? Us. Or something like us. That's when the air got heavy. I turned to him. He didn't look away. His gaze was steady, tired, but clear. Mason. He shook his head quickly. Sorry, that was dumb. No, I said. It's not. It's just... He waited. I've thought about it, I admitted. Not often, not seriously, but yeah, sometimes. His eyes flicked back to mine. What did you think? That it would ruin everything, that I'd lose my friend. He nodded slowly. Yeah, that's why I never said anything either. We sat there, silent again. But this time, it wasn't hesitation. It was something like understanding. Then, quietly, Mason leaned his head back on my shoulder. Can I stay again tomorrow? Of course. And maybe the night after? As long as you want. This time, when our hands touched, they didn't separate, and nothing else needed to be said. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I stayed on the couch next to him until his breathing evened out, slow and soft, head still resting against me. His fingers relaxed under the blanket, no longer tentative, just there, like they belonged. Eventually, I eased myself away and grabbed a pillow to lie down on the floor, not far. Just enough space to give him room, but close enough to hear him if he stirred. I stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours. It wasn't just the situation. It was the look in his eyes when he asked if I'd ever thought about us. The way he said I saw him. Like it meant more than I realized. I wanted to believe that this was just a moment, a fragile, emotional night after a breakup. But it didn't feel like that. It felt older, deeper. I don't remember falling asleep, but I remember waking up to the smell of coffee. The morning light leaked in through the blinds, slicing the room into dusty strips of gold. I blinked and stretched, my back aching from the floor. Mason was already in the kitchen, barefoot, hoodie sleeves pushed up, moving around like he'd done this 100 times. The smell of coffee and toast was in the air. I watched him quietly for a second before he noticed me. You're up, he said, like it wasn't weird at all that he was making breakfast in my apartment after asking if I'd ever wanted to date him. Barely, I said, rubbing my eyes. He set a mug down in front of me. Made it how you like it. I took a sip. It was exactly how I liked it. We didn't talk much at first. Just ate toast, sipped coffee, sat at the counter like roommates or something else not quite defined. Then he said, I meant what I said last night. I looked up slowly. About? All of it. About feeling safe here. About you seeing me. About wondering what it'd be like. You and me. I set my mug down. You sure you're not just overwhelmed? I am overwhelmed, he said honestly. But I'm also sure. I didn't answer right away. Because, yeah, I felt something too. Something real. But I also felt protective. Not just of myself, but of him. You just got out of something. I know, but that wasn't working. And this, he paused. This feels different. I nodded slowly. I don't know what this is, but I don't want to ignore it either. He smiled a little. Can we just take it slow? Yeah, I said. Slow is good. He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath, and then, like nothing had changed, we finished our coffee. Later that night, when we were both winding down, I tossed him a clean shirt and a pair of sweats. I'll take the couch again, I said. He looked at me from the bedroom doorway. You don't have to. I paused. He stepped aside slightly, letting the warm light spill into the hall. You don't have to sleep out here if you don't want to. There was no pressure in his voice, just invitation. I hesitated for a few seconds, then nodded. I'll grab my pillow. We didn't touch, not at first. We lay on opposite sides of the bed like kids at a sleepover, backs turned, trying too hard to act normal. But the space between us buzzed, like static in the dark. Then I heard him shift behind me. You still awake? He whispered. Yeah. A pause. Can I? He didn't finish the sentence, but I didn't need him to. I felt his hand on my arm. Barely a brush. Hesitant. I didn't flinch. He let it stay there, resting. Is this okay? He asked. Yeah, I said. It's okay. His hand moved slowly, tracing the edge of my sleeve. Soft, thoughtful. And we just lay there. Not tangled. Not kissing. Not rushing. Just breathing in the middle of something neither of us had words for yet. I don't know how long we stayed like that. Barely touching. Not speaking. Just breathing in the dark. But I remember the moment the shift happened. Not dramatic. Not sudden. Just a breath against the back of my neck. A little too close. A little too warm. I didn't move. I didn't speak. And then, quietly, Mason said, I used to wonder, but I always thought I wasn't allowed to. That hit harder than it should have. Allowed to what? I asked. He hesitated. Then, wonder about us. I turned toward him. He was closer now, eyes wide open in the dark, searching my face like he was afraid I might disappear. You're allowed now, I said. He didn't say anything, just nodded slightly, then let his forehead rest against mine. Our noses almost touched. I could have kissed him. He didn't pull away, but I didn't cross the line either. Not yet. Let's just sleep, I whispered. His breath caught slightly, but he nodded. Yeah, sleep's good. We lay like that, forehead to forehead, until we both drifted off. When I woke up, his arm was around me. Not halfway, not casually, fully draped over my waist. His chest pressed against my back, our legs tangled in a way that didn't feel accidental. His breathing was deep and even, still asleep. I stayed still, every nerve in my body alive, but not panicked. I didn't want to move. Eventually, he stirred. I felt his breath hitch, his fingers flex slightly, like he was realizing where he was, what he was doing. I expected him to pull away, but he didn't. Instead, his voice came, low and groggy. Morning. Morning. He didn't move. I didn't either. Then, after a pause, this doesn't feel weird, does it? No, I said. It doesn't? He tightened his arm around me slightly. Not possessive. Just sure. We lay there for a while, silent again, until he said, I dreamed we were in high school again. You were tutoring me in econ. I laughed softly. You hated that class. You were the only reason I passed. I turned slightly to look at him. He was closer than I remembered, even now. Like the night had pressed us together, and neither of us wanted to undo it. Why did you really come here last night? I asked. He blinked. I told you. Julian dumped me. Yeah, but why here? Why not a friend, your sister, a hotel? He looked at me. Because this is where I wanted to be. You're where I wanted to be. I didn't have anything to say to that. Nothing that wouldn't feel like giving away more than I was ready to. So I kissed his forehead instead. Just once. He didn't say anything, but his hand slid under my shirt, just resting on my bare waist. Warm, calm, familiar in a way that felt impossible. That's how we stayed until the sun made us move. It was the kind of morning that made everything feel a little slower, a little softer. We eventually got out of bed, but we didn't rush anything. Mason moved like someone who was still unsure if the ground beneath his feet was real. I let him take his time. He made breakfast again, just eggs and toast, nothing fancy. But he whistled while he cooked, like he wasn't carrying the weight of the night before anymore. He caught me watching him and smirked. "What?" "Nothing," I said. "Just haven't seen you smile like that in a while." He shrugged. "Feels good to not feel like shit for 5 minutes." We ate at the counter again. Same stools, same coffee, same 2 mugs that were starting to feel like ours. After breakfast, we both just hung out. No big plans. No decisions to make. He scrolled on his phone. I read emails I didn't care about. Occasionally we'd make some dumb comment or nudge each other's legs like we were already a couple, and had been for years. Around noon, he stood behind the couch where I was lying down and said, "You got plans later?" "Nope." "Want to go for a walk or something?" "Sure." So we did. We walked through the park by my apartment, where the trees had just started to turn gold. Mason kept his hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched like he was thinking too hard. I let him have his silence. After a while, he asked, "You ever feel like maybe you missed your window with someone?" I looked over. "You mean like you met them at the wrong time?" "Yeah," I nodded. "All the time." He stopped walking, looked at me. "Do you think that's us?" That question sat in the air like fog. I didn't answer right away. Finally, I said, "I think we're still writing whatever this is. So no, I don't think we missed it." He gave me this look. Half relief, half disbelief. "You're good at this." "At what?" "Saying the thing I didn't know I needed to hear." I smiled. "That's because I mean it." We kept walking. He didn't take my hand, but he didn't walk far from me either. We stayed close, side by side like we were still learning how to move in the same direction. Later that night, after takeout and a couple beers, we ended up back on the couch. Same couch. New vibe. He sat closer than usual, thigh against mine. At some point, he turned to me and said, "Can I stay here again tonight?" I raised an eyebrow. "You ever going home?" "Not if I can help it." That made me laugh. But the truth was, I didn't want him to leave. We watched a movie, kind of. Mostly we just leaned into each other. The movie playing background to the weight of his head on my shoulder, the warmth of his hand brushing mine again. Eventually he turned to me. "I know we said we'd take it slow." We did. But I don't want to pretend I don't feel this. He looked nervous when he said it. Like maybe I'd shut it down. I didn't. I leaned in and kissed him. Slow, careful. Like I was still checking to make sure he wanted it. He did. The kiss wasn't perfect. It wasn't movie-worthy or polished. It wasn't even particularly smooth. Our noses bumped. His hand knocked over the remote when he moved in closer. We both kind of laughed into it. But it was real. It was warm and slightly clumsy and honest in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. He pulled back first, just a few inches, but stayed close. His forehead leaned against mine. His eyes didn't close. "I've wanted to do that for longer than I'll admit," he said. I swallowed. "So why now?" He gave a crooked smile. "Because I don't want to keep pretending." We didn't kiss again immediately. We just stayed like that, our breath mingling. His hand slowly sliding into mine like he didn't even notice he was doing it. Eventually, we turned our attention back to the TV. Or tried to. We didn't pull away, though. Not once. We watched the last 30 minutes of whatever random thriller was on, but I couldn't tell you what it was about. because all I could feel was Mason beside me, calm, steady, there. Later, when we were getting ready for bed, I handed him the same hoodie he'd worn 2 nights before. He smiled at it. Feels like I live here now. You kind of do. He looked up. His smile faded just slightly. Is that okay? Yeah, I said. It's more than okay. In bed, things were quieter. No reaching, no tangled limbs like last night. We lay facing each other, just close enough that I could see the lines of his face in the soft light. At some point, he whispered, "This isn't just a rebound." I know. Do you? He asked. Because I don't want you to think I'm using you to get over him. I don't, I said. Not even a little. His face softened. Okay, good. We didn't say much after that, but we didn't stop touching either. Just his hand resting on my side. My fingers trailing slowly up and down his arm. We fell asleep like that, breathing slow, breathing together. I woke up first. The light was still soft, filtered through the slats in the blinds. The room was quiet, except for the subtle sound of Mason breathing beside me. He was still asleep, one arm thrown over my side again, like his body had decided for him. His face was relaxed in a way I hadn't seen since before the breakup. Like his muscles finally believed he was safe. I stayed there, watching him for a while, not out of some creepy obsession, but because I couldn't remember the last time someone looked at peace beside me. Not like this. Eventually, I slipped out of bed without waking him, moved around the apartment slowly, made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, letting the steam warm my hands while my brain tried to catch up to what my heart already knew. This wasn't a 1-minute weakness. This wasn't some temporary comfort thing. This was becoming something. When Mason finally wandered out, still rubbing sleep from his eyes, he looked at me like we hadn't just spent the night wrapped around each other. Like he'd done this 1,000 times. Hey, he said. Hey, I answered, watching him move toward the coffee pot like it was his. He poured a cup, leaned against the counter, and took a slow sip. Then, without looking up, he said, I should probably go home today. At least grab some clothes, shower, let my cat know I'm alive. I smiled. That's fair. He looked at me over his mug. But I want to come back, if that's okay. You don't even have to ask. He nodded, looking relieved. Cool. Good. We didn't make a big deal of it. I didn't walk him to his car or kiss him at the door like we were in some rom-com. He just left with a, see you tonight? And I nodded. But as soon as he walked out, the apartment felt different, like something had been added to it and taken with him at the same time. He came back that night. And the night after. We didn't define it, we didn't label anything, but slowly it all started to shift. He started keeping a toothbrush at my place, a charger, his favorite hoodie. There was a sock left on the bathroom floor one day, and instead of being annoyed, I folded it and smiled. We cooked dinner together. We argued over what movie to watch. We brushed our teeth side by side. Some nights we kissed until we fell asleep, tangled and warm. Other nights we didn't even touch, just curled into our own space, but still aware of the other's breath nearby. And every morning, I'd wake up with his arm around me again. 3 weeks after that night on the couch, I was in the middle of folding laundry when Mason came into the living room, barefoot, hair wet from a shower, holding my old hoodie in one hand. Hey, he said, can I ask you something? Sure. He dropped the hoodie onto the back of the couch and came around to stand in front of me. I don't want to keep calling this, whatever we're calling it. I paused, a half-folded t-shirt in my hands. You mean us? Yeah. He looked nervous, but he held my gaze. I know it's only been a few weeks, and I know I was a mess when I showed up at your door, but I haven't felt this good in months. Maybe years, and I don't want to screw it up by pretending it's less than it is. I looked at him for a long time, then said, okay. He raised an eyebrow. Okay, you want to be my boyfriend? Yeah, he said. I do. Cool, I want that too. The relief that flooded his face made me smile. He took a step forward. That was way easier than I expected. Yeah, well, I said, tossing the shirt onto the couch. Some things shouldn't be complicated. He kissed me then, And not like the slow, hesitant kisses from before. This one was firm, clear. The kind of kiss that knew exactly what it meant. We didn't become perfect overnight. There were still weird days. Days when he missed Julian for reasons he couldn't explain. Days when I felt like maybe I was just the guy who caught him on the way down. But there were also days where we stayed in bed until noon, laughing about nothing. Days when he brought me lunch at work, just because. Nights when we danced in the kitchen to some terrible playlist I'd made in college. And slowly, we built something. Something ours. Something real. Months later, Mason found the hoodie he wore the first night he showed up at my door. It was shoved behind the couch, still wrinkled, still smelling faintly like that night. He held it up and looked at me. "You kept it? You left it." He pulled it on and smiled. "Feels like a beginning." It was.